welcome to Genius 100's G100 Live with your host, Julie Toscan. And special guest, Obiageli Ezekwesili. And now, from the comfort and safety of her own home, please welcome Julie Toscan.
Welcome to G100 Live, and thanks so much for being here for our first show. We have viewers joining us from Nigeria, Israel, Holland, Italy, the UK, the US, and right here in Canada. Thanks so much for accommodating us in all of your different time zones. We will be taking questions in the later part of the program. If you'd like to get a question to our special guest, please do so by emailing info@genius100visions.com, and we will try and get it answered. G100 Live aims to highlight the work being done by members of the Genius 100 community. We bring accomplished, compassionate minds together to reimagine the future and to implement creative initiatives to improve it. The Genius visionaries that will often be featured on this show were selected as part of a campaign titled Genius 100 Visions of the Future. Each contributed a vision statement for a 3D book created to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the publishing of Einstein's remarkably visionary theory of relativity. Whether they are scientists, artists, philanthropists, Nobel laureates, or leaders in their field, they are both great thinkers and great doers. We applaud their positive influence, share their visions for the future, and are excited to engage with them to inspire the next generation of geniuses. It is my pleasure to introduce today's Genius 100 visionary. Dr. Obiageli Ezekwesili is an economic policy expert and was a candidate for the office of the President of Nigeria in the 2019 elections. Prior to that, she was Vice President of the World Bank's Africa Division and Nigerian Minister of Education. She also co-founded Transparency International, as well as the Bring Back Our Girls movement. Obiageli Ezekwesili was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2018. Most recently, she did a fellowship at the Robert Bosch Academy in Germany to build on her fixed politics campaign. Welcome, Obi. It is so
Hi,
great.
Julie. It's so nice.
Really nice to see you too. Wonderful. Obi, how are you and the family doing?
We are doing well, and we're doing well, but we sort of feel for people who are not doing as well as we are doing, because with the lockdown, some are privileged to be able to manage. Some others are too vulnerable and too poor to be able to cope with a lockdown, because it then means a shutdown of their economic livelihood. So we always bear those ones in mind.
Yeah, it must be. I mean, for you as an economic policy advisor, someone with so much experience in politics, your empathy and understanding of the people's needs, you must be bursting with ideas and possible solutions. Can you share that with us?
I wish that we were all bursting with ideas. We've never been this way before. This is an entirely new normal that we found ourselves. I was in the midst of the global financial economic crisis of 2008, 2009, and it was very tough, to hold up economies that were, going south because of the impact of that crisis. But that's not anything to compare with what we have on hand right now. This is much more dangerous, a crisis, because it comes with it multiple layers of other crises. So we go from a health pandemic to an economic crisis to a social crisis to food shock, possibly. We are in an entirely unpredictable world right now, and so when you think in terms of solution, the ones that come out clearly immediately are that we need to have preventive strategies to ensure that we do not continue to have waves of these and spread of these, and then because even the most advanced health systems cannot cope with this level of incursion of health risks on it, we have to prevent. We have to do everything to test, to detect, and then to isolate and to care for. Then on the health systems issue, we also have to immediately ensure that our global surveillance system is still alert, because God forbid that there's a second wave of this. We don't know what it carries along with it. So we've got to have that system still working, and then look at the economic state of the world. It's all but shut down. The world is being predicted. Some people are saying that it could be a depression as much as the depression of the 30s. Some are saying it would be a really deep recession. Whatever it is, what we know right now is that families are suffering. Families have lost livelihood. Families are unsure of their tomorrow. Unemployment is back on the agenda. Challenges of just keeping the fiscal pressure on government within manageable level. That's huge. And then on the social side, citizens who already felt disaffected because they were not getting the benefits of economic growth feel even worse, because they are being told that the only way to deal with this crisis is for you to be, in safe distance and shut away from activity. But they need activity in order to survive a day. And then you look at the challenges of farms and agri production systems not working. That essentially is another thing that we have to keep in mind on, because at some point when we're done with stock, what happens to replenishment? So these are not easy things to solve, but we can at least identify the problems, because a problem identified is a problem half solved.
Right. Oh, I like that. I like that. But do you see, Obi, do you see any of this happening? Do you feel this is it? This is the time now people are going to step up and pay attention, and these things are going to be looked at?
I think that we already see the ingenuity of the human spirit, the resilience of human beings just out of this world. We are essentially created to create. We are created to be innovative. And so when you look at the way that the private sector quickly responded to basic issues of, so how do we scale up testing? You suddenly found a proliferation of institutions, of agencies, of companies, of groups wanting to find a solution to this. It was like, no, we're all in this together. We've got to solve it. And so people's ingenuity went to the fore. Just it's so heartwarming to see the level of response. And some of the things that we're seeing are people sort of saying, I just want to be a part of the solution. So we see that on the health side. We see on the national level, local level, community level, we see people just sort of coming together and saying, we've got to do something. We can't wait for government alone to solve this. If people are consciously saying, hey, keep politics out of this. This is about humanity. This is not a time to score any point against anyone. We must all work together to solve this. So we're saying that. We're also saying, the way that companies are trying their best to go into deep into their surpluses and to find the resources to keep their workers going, to provide the palliatives, and that's important. We're seeing fellow families that don't hog the limelight. They simply are doing things quietly, ensuring that they are providing palliatives to the weak and vulnerable in their community, in their social networks, and just quietly being their neighbor's friend and supporting. And so by the time all of this is done, there would be many, many stories of heroism, but that heroism would be from quarters least even known at the time that all of that was going on. So that does give me a hope. And then when you look at the global level, you would see that even people that initially reacted on the basis of national, let's just do our national thing and ignore the rest of the world. they suddenly realize there's no national. There's no national. You know, the world is so integrated now, deeper than we imagined, and now we are as healthy as the unhealthiest amongst us. So you can do national. We've got to do global. We've got to do local, national, global, and make sure that we are in sync in the way that we define the common enemy and we all just pull from the same side.
Which I think might be a real positive coming out of this, the idea that we all start to understand that interconnectivity and how we do need to think globally. It's been said over and over again, but I don't think people have ever felt the importance of that as much as they have now. So that it is a positive, I'm hoping. But Obi, I had a question, something that you touched on. Who has the greater responsibility, the government or the people? What is the balance there? What should it be?
You know, once you're dealing with a global public bad or a global public good, the first entity that everybody looks up to is government. And that's correct. Because, I mean, you know, we can all solve our private problems. And occasionally, when our private problems are too much for us, we can call our neighbors and our friends to help us. But in terms of solving certain problems that we call global public bads, for example, a virus that just, you know, it launches itself into the atmosphere and then becomes a disaster to everyone within reach of it. That's a global public bad. It cannot be the people. The people, how do you then immediately organize the people to begin to respond to a thing like that? So the first entity has to be government, and it has to be government with clarity, with courage, with credibility, with transparency, and a sense of accountability. And so they step up there and they say to the society, we've got war on our hands. And then they say to the people, these are the things that we need to do. And these are the things that we as government can immediately do, but these are the things that we will require you to do. For example, this matter of, the tension that exists between what keeping safe distance and being in a lockdown, and what it means for economic livelihood, that tension, requires, at least for the weak and vulnerable at the personal level or individual level, or the weak and vulnerable at the country level, it requires that somebody should be able to step in and buy compliance. That buying compliance requires a deep pocket that these people you're trying to get to comply do not have. So those kinds of things create opportunities for partnership, for collaboration, for division of labor between government and the people, as well as business.
Wow. Do you think that what is happening right now with the pandemic is going to bring some issues that have maybe been previously swept under the rug to the surface?
I think so. I think that one of the things that we definitely will see people discussing more and more is going to be, the responsibility for managing global risks. We're going to be, this is not going away. The idea that we could wake up and there's a risk that threatens the world, it's not going to go away. So we have to understand that risks are going to be with us. Now, we see that globally, we were not prepared. Everyone's caught napping or something like that. So we're going to look at the global surveillance system and see how the collaboration, cross-border would be, and how we can, innovate and reform existing institutions that have mandates to handle things like this. So there's going to be a powerful agenda for reform of global systems and institutions. There's also going to be, at a national level, a lot of scrutiny of government and its capacity, and in order to identify where the gaps are and to know exactly how to fill these gaps, how to adequately prepare for any eventuality. Then you're going to see things like climate change, come to the fore. You're going to see people want to say, what is there a link? Is there a correlation between, some of these breakouts that we see more often and the climate change? So a lot of research, a lot of investigation, scrutiny, academic curiosity will be on the table. And then you look at the matter of innovation. There's going to be plenty of innovation. People are not going to want us to be in a place where a pandemic of this kind strikes, and then that's when we're thinking, okay, so how do we find our citizens in order to send money to them? Why should it take a pandemic for us to know how to send a check to our citizens? So the citizen, a citizen-centered design of social contract is going to happen. So social contract conversation between citizens and their governments will happen. We need citizen-centeredness. They've been asking for it, but citizens kept being thrown to the margins of democracy. Democracy is going to get a lot of conversation around it, and what role the citizen and has, as well as what obligation governments have to citizens. And finally, I think that we're going to discuss the markets. We're going to discuss the market. We're going to discuss citizen and government, the relationship. Because the fact that the production system of the world just simply ended up in one place, and when we got into crisis, it's actually the place from where the virus originated that is also the supplier to the world of most of what is needed in order to respond to this scary pandemic. So there are many things that we were not talking about. We're going to discuss globalization and what kind of globalization. Now, the problems of inequality will worsen because, frankly speaking, even though this pandemic could hit the rich and poor alike, it disproportionately punishes the poor and the vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Obi, I wanted to, in 2019, you ran for the president of Nigeria, right? A country with an emerging economy, a population of close to 200 million people, which is roughly 7 times the population of Canada, and a handful of social issues. What gave you the courage? Honestly, I think a few years ago, I actually considered running for local politics. It took me about 17 seconds to realize I was not cut out for the politics of politics. So what courage?
You get to a point where you are too angry about the status quo that you are faced with the prisoner's dilemma of saying, I detest politics, I can't stand politics. But then you're saying to yourself, but I can't stand what I am saying worse than not standing politics. So 2 bad options for you, right? So you take the list of the bad options. So the list of the bad options for me had become, you have to run. You have to get into politics. And at that point, the words of I think it's Plato came straight into my mind. Plato said, the philosopher Plato said that when you think that politics is beneath you, you will be governed by your inferiors. And I don't look at that from a place of pride that one is superior. It's simply that the ideas that will govern you or the space in which you operate would be lower than what is acceptable. You look at my country, you reeled out our population, but population is not enough. Population becomes mightily wonderful if you're talking about our human capital. We don't yet have that level of translation of our raw people, raw population into human capital. We need to do that translation. And that translation and transition is so important because with a world-class human capital of that kind of population, then we would power the economy in ways that would be exciting. We would have innovations, we would have value added manufacturing activities, we would run sectors of the economy that would be so diversified, and so we would create a prosperous society. We don't want that to just be a population of people where we have the infant mortality lower than the average of the rest of emerging economies, or where we have women who still die at the place of birth or immediately after birth, or where we have where we're the country with the largest number of out of school children. Where we are the country that's considered the world capital of extreme poverty, because we've got some 93 million of our people in extreme poverty. That just does not work. So I had enough of just hoping and demanding from those in politics to take the right courses of action that could change the trajectory. And I got tired of waiting for them to respond appropriately. And so I decided that it was time to exemplify the idea that the citizen can do much more than be on the sideline or demanding for accountability is crucial. That's been my life, but I also think that we're not going to diversify our possibilities, make sure that there are people demanding, and make sure that there are people amongst those demanding that can take the further step of fixing the politics of their countries.
I feel in right not long before election day, you chose to withdraw your candidacy, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about that. If there were some reasons you were wanting to share with us, but as you were speaking, I just realized the value in your message, in what you were teaching people and sharing people and helping the people elevate their expectations. I think there was so much value just in that. But I just thought if there was something you wanted to share with us that might be a learning as far as why you decided to withdraw your candidacy.
So I don't, my frustration with the politics of my country and on a larger scale, my continent, is that I've seen a political culture that tends to subvert the public good for the private interests of those who get the opportunity to be public leaders. And what this has created is a distortion of the incentive and a distortion of the sanctions within our society. And so this distortion has had a very terrible effect, in the sense that even in countries where you have natural resources endowment, and you have this endowment of people by virtue of population, they're still unable to make things happen. And that's because when leadership subverts the public space for personal interest, then there is some trade-off that's going on. The trade-off is often the right kinds of policies that would enable the larger number of people get the benefits of good governance. And so that, for me, was the context around my absolute frustration that made me decide that it is time to get into politics, in order that we can begin to change the political culture. But now, when I got into politics, I didn't get into politics, being a member of of any of the two dominant parties. I joined a very small party, but a party that, based on its antecedents that we could see, had managed to stay strong and not join bigger parties when it could have done so. And then when they were very clear in saying, your values are very well known to us in this society. We believe in your values. They call me Madam Due Process in Nigeria because of the work that I've done in government. And they say, Madam Due Process, we need a different kind of value drive within the public space, and you are a model for it, and we really want you to run on our ticket. And that made sense after many talks with them. as I began to run on their ticket, however, it became clear to me that the same disease of the dominant parties resided even in the small one. And it was going to, it presented a value divergence. It was a value shock. With me holding very firmly that we're going to do things in a different kind of way, but the old brigade saying, "Oh, you don't know how politics works. This is how it works." And then I look at what they say is how politics works, and it contradicts. It contradicts my values, and so I say to myself, "This is not it. This is not it. Nothing is worth negotiating my values for, because that's exactly what my father trained me to know." And so we've got to take a step back when things like that happen and reevaluate. And I was so glad that it was not tempting enough for me to drop my values.
Yeah, wonderful. I mean, our values. I mean, it's who we are, and I think if we're not living them, we don't feel good on the inside or the outside.
No, we don't.
So thank you for that. I wanted just a little bit more on that. You recently spent a number of months, 6 months in Berlin at the Robert Bosch Academy, focusing on your Fix Politics campaign. And I read a quote that I'm going to read back to you now. I'm now, this is your quote: "I am now totally committed to fix politics and will dedicate the rest of my life to mobilizing citizens for the emergence of a new kind and higher order of politics that puts the people first in my continent and in my country." Now, should that lead us to believe that you might consider running for president again?
That's in the womb of time. That's in the womb of time, Julie. One thing that I do know is that part of my experience in actually getting to the place where I was prepared to run for office was one thing. It is that you cannot create the change of a political system that's entrenched in a pattern of behavior by having one individual take on it. What works is a structural approach. And that structural approach means that you need to get the citizens to awaken to their role in democracy. You need to get many more citizens awakened to the fact that the demand side of the political system is as important as the supply side of the political system, and that you have to get both sides almost overturned in the sense that you get into building a new class of consciousness of the citizens about their role, about the fact that there is not an X% of people whose responsibility it is to be a savior to the rest of them. No. Everyone is a savior of their country. All right. And then on the supply side, you need to make sure that you have a leadership production system. So that from the community level all the way to the national level, you need to have a system that emerges leaders even before they begin to seek for public office. You can see already that there's a track record that shows the values, the competencies, the skill, the capacity, the consciousness of being effective leaders. So that when you have that, you would create a democracy that is so modern, and it's democracy that is based on equality of opportunity for the citizens of the country. So you don't have a group of people hijack the democracy of your country and then, keep the rest in a state of perpetual poverty.
Well, and I can imagine that trust must play a really big part, for the people. People need to be able to trust and be able to demand and be able to sort of raise their expectations. And I guess this is where, the people become much more important than the politics or the government, right, where they're starting, where they're standing up. And I think this is. I wanted to touch on one more thing. I could spend so much time on every one of these topics. But I wanted to touch on one more thing with you before we go to commercial break. And after commercial break, we're going to take some questions. I wanted to ask you about the kidnapping of the girls in Chibok, Nigeria, and the Bring Back Our Girls campaign. Every time I've met you, and I've been fortunate enough to meet you in person, you're wearing that beautiful pin that talks to that it reflects the Bring Back Our Girls campaign movement. And the movement did get a lot of international and a lot of celebrity attention. And I just wondered if you could take a few minutes to share the girl's story with us, and then if you could talk a little bit about how did that campaign impact the release of some of the girls in 2017.
You know, as the thing about the Chibok girls tragedy is that it takes me into an entirely different mood when it comes up, because it's etched in my memory a certain level of sadness that that is very hard to control. The Chibok girls, for me, represent their experience, represent what I don't want to see ever again in a society, in our world. When the girls were abducted, and it came to my attention the next day after they were abducted, and it wasn't because there was a news item here in Nigeria. It was actually on Twitter that I saw it. I follow the BBC handle, and the BBC handle tweeted it and said over 100 girls abducted from their school in northern Nigeria. And I thought, no, how? And so I responded to BBC tweet, and I said verified. And as soon as I did that, my mind said to me, are you asking BBC whether they verified their news? BBC has internal quality control system that would make sure that they don't put out this kind of news if there is nothing to it. And that's when I panicked.
So unbelievable. It seems so unbelievable.
My mind told me this, and I panicked. I panicked instantly because I thought, oh my God, wow, terrorists have taken this number of girls from their school. My goodness. So I began to tweet instantly to call attention of government. And the reason that was instant for me was that I had been very upset at our government for failing to give justice to students who were killed in a federal government college that I had known very well when I was Minister of Education of the country. Terrorists had gone to their school, killed them, 29 of them, burnt them, and it was the most horrific thing. And I was so upset at that. And I said, well, this is a turning point. We need, as a government, we need our government to give a strong signal to terrorists that we're not going to negotiate our children's lives with their education. You can't give our children the option of stay away from school or go to school, and then you would be killed or abducted. So I wasn't happy at all at what happened, because when I kept on that issue, the government of the day was very upset at me because I went as far as suggesting that a major celebration be cancelled because these children had been killed, and that it would not make sense for us to carry on with that centenary anniversary celebration, and we're going to be dancing on the graves of our children. I was so upset by it, and nothing happened. We never got anything called justice for those children. And in a matter of weeks, we all moved on. I moved on, but I was not very happy with even myself for moving on. And then Chibok girls happened. And I thought, wow, oh my God. When the Buniya, the boys were killed, I had said that we must not send a signal that incentivizes these terrorists to try to do anything again to our children. So maybe what they've done is they've seen that we did not care for the ones they killed, so they have decided to do worse. And so that was too painful for me, Julie. And so I decided that I wasn't going to move an inch on the subject matter of getting attention for those girls, because I felt that if we could make enough a noise about their situation, then they would get the attention that would enable our government to go quickly into a quick and a search, rescue operation and recovery operation for them. Little did I know that we were going to spend now 6 years with 112 of those girls still not back. But the advocacy that you talked about, Bring Back Our Girls campaign, became a campaign that everyone could relate to because of our shared humanity. When people would hear that girls who went to school had been taken away by terrorists, they immediately thought of their daughters. They thought of their sisters. They thought of their cousins. They thought of their neighbors' children. They just thought of a fellow human being, and they were connected to those girls instantly. So the girls are global citizens because they represent this ideal that when a child, especially a girl child, gets up and says, I am going to get some education for myself, that child is not trying to be for herself. She's also trying to be for all of us, because her education enhances us. Her education takes our civilization further and further, where, higher than we met it. So for us, the 112 girls that came back, we don't go hugging the camera and saying, oh, if we did not do this, then that would not have happened. We are just so glad that we did not stop. Many people, we were attacked, we were insulted. I continue to be attacked. I mean, like, it's almost like I committed a sin by standing out there and saying these girls must be given justice, because some people hold me responsible for the loss of election by the government of that day, because we were campaigning for Chibok girls. I would do it over and over again, because the one child that we don't defend is all of us that we don't defend. And I believe that Chibok girls, and later on, another group of girls that were abducted from a place called Dapchi, we carried on with advocacy for them. Ultimately, almost all of them came back except one, and then 5 that had been said to have died while in the enemy territory. But the one that did not come back, Leah Sharibu, we continue to hold the candle out for them, because we kind of feel that you can't simply walk away from these kinds of tragedies. What are we saying? Are we saying that our world has become so jaded? Our world has become so thickened, or so stiffened that when things like that happen, we can just for a moment think about it and then just move away? Well, our movement is saying that until Chibok girls are given a closure, we cannot shut the door to the possibility that our girls will come back to their parents.
And you have, Obi, you have such a strong voice and so much knowledge, and you're just so genuine and caring. And if it's not for people like you to stand up for other people, then who will do it? Who will do it? So it's just so wonderful that you started something like this. And I've been looking more and more into the effects and the impacts. And there's a wonderful documentary on many of the girls that were released, and just to see them in a place of safety, and you could look into their eyes and just imagine what they had gone through that time. And you're right, there's the celebration of having all of those girls back. I'm certain there's always that underlying, well, there's more that we need to get back. But so do you think that the grassroots campaigns and the voices of people really do make a difference?
Oh, they do.
Yeah. The government is listening and
They do. The thing that government is most scared of anywhere in the world
great.
is citizens united. When citizens are united, I am telling you, governments become afraid. And that's why I think it was Thomas Jefferson that said that vigilance is the prize that citizens, eternal vigilance is the price that citizens must pay for liberty. You want freedom, you want liberty as a citizen, then you must have eternal vigilance. No matter how charismatic your leaders may be, leaders must be put under scrutiny. They must be put under check. They must be asked questions. They must be accountable to you as the citizens. The basis of democracy is that all of us cannot be governing ourselves. And so we delegated representative democracy means that we cast our vote and we delegate, we use the word trust, we place our trust in certain people, saying to them, do what I would have done had I had the time to be doing it. Okay, so we deposit it in them, but we cannot simply say, all right, we've told them to do it and we know they will do it. Well, my dad always quoted for me and said, whatever is not monitored cannot be measured. Whatever is not monitored cannot be measured. So we've got to monitor what is being done by the power by the powers that become as a result of our democratic choices that we make. So citizens at the community level, community organizing, especially post-COVID, you're going to see a lot more of community organizing. Citizens are going to, push themselves to the mainstream of the politics of their countries, and it's about time.
Yeah, as they should, right? As they should.
As they should. As they should. Yes.
Situations like the ones of the Chibok girls and what you've done for them actually show that kind of a voice, that sort of advocacy, that sort of a grassroots campaign, that bringing together of people really, really does make a difference.
Really. And that's what I also want to, sort of do at scale in terms of just looking at the politics and saying, how do we use the knowledge that we have of where things have worked well when the citizens remained engaged, they stayed informed, they stayed active in demanding and putting pressure on those who they have given elective power. How do we build a system that produces that level of enlightened consciousness of citizens, so that at the local level of governance, at the state level of governance, at the national level of governance, and then even at the broader global level of governance, the citizen's voice would be really there, not indifferent, not lethargic, not docile, but actively engaged in producing good governance on the one hand, and on the other hand, how building a system. I call it what we're doing through the Fix Politics initiative is that we're setting up what we call the Public Leadership Laboratory Initiative. It's like a laboratory where you're building capable leaders. You're training leaders in policy, in politics, and in governance, so that in that one person, I can find a leader who's got the right sets of values, who's got the kinds of tools of policy knowledge. They don't have to be experts in all policies. They just need to understand policy, especially understand economic policy, because that matters for prosperity. We need to take many people out of poverty. We cannot be stuck in poverty in the 21st century. That is totally unacceptable. So we train them in policy, we train them in governance, so that they understand that you can actually innovate on systems and procedures that would underpin the way that government works, so that you can guarantee levels of accountability and good performance of bureaucracy, and create an environment that is trustworthy for private sector to operate. And private sector, not in terms of big investments, those are good, but majority of it is going to be your own citizens having the freedom to engage their capital in productive activities. So for me, the where we're going with fixed politics is really to dare. We're daring to say we can change our society. The worst thing you can do is to be overwhelmed as a citizen. Don't ever get overwhelmed, because you see, those who don't want the right things to happen in your society, they never wear out. They don't wear out. These guys don't wear out. So why should you wear out? You want something good to happen and you're worn out? Who told you you have the luxury to wear out? You shouldn't. They should wear out. Those who want to do ill should wear out. You who would love you who would love to see a better society, no matter what you get thrown at, you just simply do.
Yeah. Very,
Yeah,
very,
you can do that.
very, very good examples of how knowledge is power. And now, sir, I'm being told we have to take. I'm being told we have to take a little bit of a break. So
Okay.
it will be a very brief one. We're a minute and 15 seconds to be exact. So if any question for Obiageli and you haven't sent it in yet, now's your chance. Please email your questions to info@genius100visions.com. Don't forget to include your name and where you're viewing us from. We will be back in just over a minute, and Obi will answer some of your questions. Thank you.
On the centennial of Albert Einstein's general theory of relativity, the Genius 100 community set out to capture the visions of thought leaders from across the globe as they shared their perspective on the next century. Genius 100 Visions of the Future has since become a publishing milestone, representing the world's first 3D printed book, while capturing the imagination of intellects and global citizens alike. Now, for the first time ever, these inspirational writings have been made available. While the 3D book is currently in production and will have limited availability, a 2D version is being created to make its astounding content accessible to everyone. Their message is timely, a glimpse into the future that may be uncertain today, but is filled with hope for tomorrow. You now have the rare opportunity to make this thought-provoking book part of your private collection. Don't delay. Limited copies are in production. Claim yours by emailing info@genius100visions.com.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for your questions. I've got a few of them. We've got just a few minutes left, so we're hoping that we will we'll try and get through as many as we can. We have a question coming in from Los Angeles, Nicole. Dr. Obi, what is your mantra as a policy enthusiast?
A world of equality where the child of the poor can attain the height never imagined by the family they've come from.
Nice, thank you. And Lisa from Toronto is asking, Dr. Obi, do you believe there is a gender split around impact of the pandemic?
I think the numbers are not fully out. We have to wait for more data to come. But I think that in general terms, what we see is that it is clearer that people with underlying illnesses and people who are older are more susceptible to this. But in terms of what percentage of the people dying are women, we're not of what percentage of people contracting the virus are women. Where the data is not yet very sharp, so I'll be very conscious not to speculate yet.
We'll know a lot more looking back, as we go
ahead. We'll know a lot more looking back, yes, and we must use the knowledge of what we learn as a basis to improve health outcomes and health investments, especially the things that matter for women and children. And a lot of the times, that the budget for health gets neglected. And then even the existing budget for health is not well spent. So we have to be more conscious to getting value for money for every dollar, for every naira that we put into sectors like health and education. Because now we know that health is economy and economy is health. So this whole, silo approach at looking at development of society it comes to an end.
Well, I think we have time for one last question. Alex from London is asking, Obi, as many of us in countries around the world are in different stages of emerging from lockdown, could you share a bit of the criteria that might be used by government when trying to balance public health and the reopening of the economy?
I think that an evidence-based approach would be helpful. It would be helpful to be sequential. And, by this testing, the diagnostics that reveal things that we don't know in various locales. So whether it's in London or anywhere, you need to understand through the testing, through the diagnostics, where the vulnerabilities lie the most and how that, your corridors of economic opportunities operate. So if you know your economic corridors, you need to know what kind of systems to put in that place, not to undermine any gains that we have made in terms of the public health. Because if you push too quickly and you get a backlash, that's even going to be worse. So the thing is, it's not an easy call, but sequential approach that is based on evidence. Use the testing, use the knowledge that is gained, use the data that is produced as a basis to determine, no, this is not yet time to open. For example, one of the things that I believe that we would see an opening and a need to open, but in a gradual way, is going to be agriculture. Because at the end of the day, what could happen is that you go from economic shock to food shock. Food insecurity, the world would not be able to survive that. So there's got to be a way, but we need to do it with absolute integrity, absolute purposefulness. Don't let's be taken in by politics and drive the wave of politics, because people have to be alive first before you can talk of economy. And then when you think of the fact that some of the sectors that you want to open, people are not yet going to be trusting enough to come out. Until people are trusting enough to come out, it's useless to open, certain things. So we need to build back the confidence of the people as consumers in order for production side of economy to be really what it's while when it opens shop.
Thank you very much for that, Obi. I feel like we've could have spent so much more time on every single topic, and I hope to have the opportunity to speak with you again soon, and hopefully maybe you'll join our show again soon.
Thank you, Julie. I am glad that we got a time out like this to do this.
It was lovely to see you and know that you're healthy. And again, we are so appreciative. I'm sending love to you and the family. Thanks again. And I hope to see you in person soon. Stay healthy.
Thank you. Thank you. Peace out.
Peace out. In 2 weeks on G100 Live, we will be speaking with Genius 100 visionary Jan Creamer and Tim Phillips of Animal Defenders International. Jan and Tim have been involved with several international animal rescues, funding the relocation and rehoming of circus lions, tigers, chimpanzees, and other neglected animals. They're a major force for animal protection around the world. We're going to speak with them about the work they are currently doing, and I'm looking forward to their educated and experienced perspective on that strange but ridiculously successful Netflix docuseries Tiger King. I hope you'll join us. In our last few seconds, I want to leave you all with this bit of optimism. We've all been dealing with this unprecedented pandemic with varying degrees of fear for ourselves and for each other. This is Italica. She's believed to have survived the Spanish flu in 1918 and has just recently recovered from the coronavirus in time to celebrate her 102nd birthday. Let's all continue to be safe, Be healthy, and let's all be optimistic. See you next time.